we should be live. Does anybody have it live going? Going live. It says we're live. Oops, and my Facebook just crashed.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Okay, we're live.
Okay.
We are live. So cheers, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Wine and Whiskey Wednesday. It is Wednesday at 8 o'clock.
Hello.
And welcome. We're having a conversation tonight, which I think is going to be quite interesting. So I do hope a couple of our people join us because I think it'll be a really good discussion. And before we get into it, how's everyone tonight?
Good.
We've been chatting for a while already. That's why we just kind of jump in. But how is everyone tonight?
Oh, it's good. It's been a really good day, good week. Fabulous.
Excellent.
So happy to be invited. Thank you. My first time. So I don't know, what does that make me, like a Facebook Live version or something like that? I don't know.
A wine and whiskey virgin. Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, rookie.
All right.
All right. We'll have you be a rookie.
All
Okay.
right. Sounds good.
So
And
our topic. So just have you watched any of our wine and whiskeys before?
I think I have. I've watched. Yeah, I think I've watched a few. Yep.
Okay. So then you know the format.
More or less.
Basically what we want to cover tonight, the topic that we want to cover came up from a post that Michelle made in one of the other Facebook groups. I think it was Kelly's Facebook group, the Workflow Watering Hole. And I thought, as you know, I read your question and then I was reading some of the answers that were coming through, and it had a fair bit of engagement. So I thought it would be a great topic because obviously we are the hot ninjas. So we like to talk about team topics. And I thought it was a great topic related to team, and it tends to be a struggle. It tends to be a struggle as to where to start, how to keep it going, how to get some momentum, but also how to get some, I hate the word compliance, but to get some buy-in, I guess, from your team. That's a better term, right? Buy-in is a better term.
It sounds better.
It sounds more politically correct. Okay.
How
And
about engaged? We try to get the team engaged.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So Matthew, are you going to join us online? There's Matthew.
Yeah,
joining.
there's Matthew there.
Perfect.
There he is. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Matthew.
Good evening.
How are you this week?
Good. I started actually on these evenings trying to leave work a little early so I could get home before traffic and stop causing a disruption on my way home in traffic, because I do really enjoy these conversations.
Appreciate that. We enjoy having you.
Thank you.
So our topic tonight is we're going to talk about best practices and processes. And it's a really broad topic, but we're going to try and narrow it down a little bit. So what we want to talk about is, and maybe Michelle, you want to take this since it was your question that sparked the whole discussion.
Okay, now I'm just trying to remember what exactly it was. I believe we were talking about communication and how to have our staff talk to clients. And I think that's the thread you're referring
Yes.
to?
Yes.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background about us. We're virtual, so nobody sits in the same office. So, it's really important to have processes and good ways to communicate with our staff because they just can't, turn to us and ask us questions. So it was sort of interesting how, we let, one of the things that we do is, of course, the staff can send emails and whatever to the clients. And, we try to make sure that's quite respectful. But it is interesting because it seems like every time we write something down, we've missed something. And it's really a learning process. And we're still relatively new to this virtual kind of world. It's only been about a year. So we're still learning lots. Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with that. Usually one of the reasons or one of the main reasons that people don't go with a team or don't start a team or disband their team is because the quality of work is not what, as a business owner, when you started your firm, you don't get the consistency. You don't get the quality out there. They're not communicating the way that you would. They're not doing things the way that you would. And Steve can attest to me, that being the biggest problem for me. And so what you end up doing is everything goes through you.
Yes.
Right? Is nothing leaves the office until I sign off on it.
Yes.
And as you grow, you're one person,
I
therefore
believe there's a term for that.
and what would that very politically correct term be?
Bottleneck.
I don't know if it's politically correct, but there is a term. I believe that starts with control and ends with something that rhymes with weak.
You mean like a typical accountant?
And so an example of that is emails. Is there, we have, when we started our business, we have a certain way of communicating, and usually it's our name on the door. And so we feel, or maybe I'll speak for myself. I felt that every email that went out the door was reflective of me personally. And so a lot of the reason that people don't start this process of growing a team or having a team is because they feel like they're losing control. And your comment or your thread, which was just only talking about client communication, how do you create some standard verbiage that everybody's using? I thought was a good question, because there's so much communication that takes place now by email. And so did you find a solution based on the conversations that people gave you?
Okay, so I'm guilty. I don't remember the actual thread.
Okay, no, that's fine.
But we're always trying to find processes. So what we do is we use a tool that allows everybody to see everybody's emails. So from internally, it all comes from one place. So from a client's perspective, they only have to know one email, almost like a help desk. But we get to see what, the staff get to see what we email, we get to see what the staff email, and we can comment on this after. So it's a really good communication. Like a staff person might say, oh, do you want me to respond to this question? It seems kind of a bit of a hot topic, or how do you want us to respond to it? So from that perspective, we can at least give staff guidance.
Okay.
So, but that's one time, right? I mean, you don't want to have to do that every single time. So what we're trying to look at is tools that can maybe capture some of these things. So we use Teams internally. So what we've started to do, I see Matthew likes that. So we started was a wiki. So what we've started to do is a little wiki. Okay, in this situation, you do this. And in this situation, you do that. But I could see eventually that's going to get long. I mean, that's good to start with, a wiki like that, but it's not searchable. It's almost like a Word document with headings.
Right.
So, that's kind of where we're at right now is, so we've got a process now to sort of capture that, to manage it. But long term, is that scalable? Is that going to work if we've got 15 people? So that's sort of where we're kind of going with this sort of thing, is it's got to be something that's a consistent message. So we know, how do we respond to that? And then somebody else can find that as well.
Okay. Would you mind sharing the tool with our audience as to
I
what
don't
it
have
is?
one yet. It's just in the wiki in Teams.
Okay.
So we're
it's part of Teams.
still looking, and that was I believe that was part of the question that I had, is what are other people doing for this? Are you using like a knowledge base? Is that what people are using?
Okay.
Or, is it just a Word document? Or what is it? Like I said, we tried this wiki that's in Teams, but it's pretty rudimentary. It's a simple tool that works for now, but I think it wouldn't scale. Like we would want something that would scale.
But you had mentioned that the way that your email is set up.
That tool. Okay, that tool that we're using, it's awesome. I love it. It's from Montreal. It's called Missive.
Missive?
Missive. So if you guys ever heard of something called Front, it's kind of like Front, but it's Missive. So it sits on top of your email, and it lets you assign emails. It's almost like a little help desk, but it lets you assign emails to your various teams, and then you can comment on it. So for example, Juliet, if you and I were having a discussion with a client, a client emailed you and they were not happy. So you could say, Michelle, how do you want me to deal with this? Or do you want to take this one? So we could actually have a little chat in there that the client wouldn't see. So we could have some communication right around this email.
Without having to forward it and go back and forth. And interesting. I've never heard of that.
Yes,
And
well,
we
love
that communication in real time, or do you go back and forth?
No, it's in real time. It's almost like a chat attached to email.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yes.
A new
So
toy for you to play with, Steve.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't like new apps, but you know.
Well, this has been a game changer for us. We got it about 3 months ago, and somebody on Facebook recommended it. So we just thought we'd try it. So we tried it about 3 months ago, just between myself and my partner, just to see how that would work. And we loved it so much that we brought in our staff right away. And it's really been a game changer for us because it gives the staff confidence to communicate to the clients. It gives us confidence because we can sort of, we don't watch every single email, but if you see something going through that, you can look at the history and see, maybe it's time that I get in because, the staff isn't getting anywhere with the client. Maybe we have to step in and, push the client a little bit more than maybe what a staff person would feel comfortable with.
Excellent. That's a great recommendation. And that's one of the things I love about, Wine and Whiskeys is that we get to learn and hear about all this new stuff that's out there because you can't possibly know all of them and stay on top of all of them. So when someone else is posting it. So Steve, you posted it in our chat. Can you post it on the Facebook group for everybody else?
That was primarily for Matthew.
Oh, okay.
Well, and the support has been phenomenal. When we first signed up, of course, we had our little one-on-one, and they've been really good. Any questions that come up, they're small, like they're sort of a grassroots company. They don't do a lot of advertising. It's been like word of mouth. So probably this event, a lot more people will find out about them, but we're really quite happy.
And they're Canadian.
Yes, they're Canadian. They're from Montreal. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so does anyone have any thoughts just on the email communication side of a good way of creating consistency with your team? Matthew?
Nobody's gonna like my answer. I hate email. Don't ever answer them. Don't respond to them, and maybe they'll stop sending them.
So how do you communicate with your clients then?
I wish I could actually say I do that. No, with clients, it's a mixture. For some of the, there's no way to get away from email. I mean, I wish there was. We use Teams as well. We use Teams primarily for our internal communication. And we are actively opening up external communication channels for specific clients that really have grown into the point where they need it. So it's a different team itself. The internal ones, they don't have access to, of course. The external facing ones, they do. So they come in as a guest and they can contribute, they can collaborate, they can do all of that. The beauty of Teams is it's very similar to Slack, but I feel it is a lot easier to use. When I go from device to device, if I add on a new team, I don't have to go and add it on to every single device. I just log into Teams and it's there, which I'm super happy about. I can be part of different people's teams. So like if there was a wine and whiskey Teams, I could be brought into that as a guest and have a drop down to flip between them as well. But the real power is I love that how you can embed other web pages into Teams. So you have a team for a client. At the top toolbar, kind of where a wiki would be, you choose to add something and you can just do a URL, which means you could do a URL for a different application and embed that application right into that team and utilize those resources also. So it makes it very easy to make it very unique.
Interesting.
We use ShareFile to send documents back and forth that is requiring like signature and like private communication. I have not used it yet. We are in process of implementing Liscio because it gets rid of email. Yay! Liscio is love the company, love the people. The people who are designing Liscio were the people that designed Airbnb. So it is very comfortable and it feels good to be in the application. And that is very, very important when it comes to client engagement.
Okay.
So.
And how does it get rid of email?
I'll let you know.
You'll give us an update on it once it's okay. So you've shared some tools that you're using to communicate with your team and with your clients. But if we go back to Michelle's original question, which was, how do you make sure that the consistency of the way that the communication is taking place is monitored, or is there, you're setting a standard for it?
I think it's important to note the difference between project management and process management, because they are two totally different things that are very commonly confused.
We were just talking about this, Steve.
Yeah, like Teams. So Teams is great to handle it's good for communications and the project aspect of it. But the process aspect of it, which is, okay, what's my checklist, i.e. process street? What's my checklist of duties that have to be done? People often, they won't go through that whole aspect of setting that up because like, oh, well, people won't follow through and use this. Agreed. I think we actually talked about this before on Wine and Whiskey, where it's like the people at Starbucks, you don't expect the person who's been working at Starbucks for 2 years to keep using the checklist. But the checklist is there for the person who just joins the team, and they then have the guide of how to do it so they can onboard as an employee faster and do a better job. But more importantly, it makes you write down your process so people know what to follow.
Okay, absolutely. Those are great points. So I know that one of the responses that came up in the chat, and it's something that we do internally as well, is we actually have a bank of canned responses, which we've written out, which are the most common scenarios that our team is going to need to reply to clients. Everything from, introducing a new app, or there's a problem, or, hey, we're waiting for your stuff. It's all laid out with blanks for them to fill in. And italicized examples, so that this is kind of how you would, and the examples are in a different font color as well, so you need to change it when it goes into an email. But it's italicized and it's a different font color. And so it gives an example of, if you have to give them a list, here's kind of examples of what you would give them in the list. And I know that I don't remember who it was, one of the other people said that they've got canned responses as well. The challenge is making that searchable so that it's easy for your team to find. We use G Suite internally for our email. And so we have actually the ones that we know the team uses a lot or will frequently use in Gmail. You actually have the option of setting up canned responses that they can just bring in the template. So they don't have to go to our processes, copy it. They can just go to their canned templates. And so the ones that we know they're going to use over and over again. So a lot of people have those set up as well. Any other suggestions? I mean, without us having to write every email?
Well, the other thing that I think, now that I remember more about what we talked about in this thread, is we use something called ClickSend, because one of the comments I had is a lot of clients don't respond to email.
Yeah.
So we'd have to find another way to get their attention. And Matthew's smiling at that. So we've started using ClickSend, which sends text messages. So what we have done, and I've also started doing this, is monthly reminders that use Zapier to send out an email and a text message at the same time. And the content of the text message is basically read your email. Right. So, but we've, but you know what? It works. It works. Like, I just find people, they're not responding to the emails, but as soon as I send them a text, we get a response, right?
Yeah.
We use Dialpad as a phone system and have been for a couple of years. And the thing I love most about it is it does do text message. And if Dialpad, it's very much like a Ring Central and all the other ones, good pricing. And if you looked at the analytics, it's got great analytics behind it. The number of text messages I was sending through it for the longest time, until I use Zoom now for everything, it was a couple thousand text messages every single month. Wow. Because I had actually kind of trained most of my clients out of our group of clients to shoot me a text message, and because it was easier. The best part is it's searchable. You can retain it. So I could always go back and actually use it as an audit log as well. And they just added a Zapier integration. Oh, and I'm definitely happier, because now we can take and zap that stuff into places if we need to. So I love the text message capability, big time.
Perfect. Hi,
So are you
Tatiana.
finding the same thing, Matthew, that your clients respond better to text? Yeah.
It's more informal. So email drives me nuts because I'm so cautious with my words and it can take forever to write an email. But a text message, I can be less formal and just get the point across.
Okay, interesting. Sorry. Hi, Tatiana. Nice to have you join us. And you're muted. I'm not sure if that's intentional or not, but we can't hear you. You're still, would you like me to unmute you? I can. There we go.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Hi there.
Oh, okay,
Welcome.
good.
Welcome. Okay, so canned responses is one option. I remember as well the conversation in the thread then morphed into what about, you know, processes and documents and how do you document your stuff, and I loved one response from, and I think it was probably the first or second response that you got, that they've actually created a Google site for all of their internal processes, which is brilliant. I don't know why we've not thought of that. I mean, we use G Suite and Google Sites is part of G Suite. And basically they built an internal website that has all of their processes and documents on it. And it's, you know, searchable, and it has links that take them to an actual, and it, he was saying that with Google Sites, you can embed or link to Google Sheets and Google Docs, and because it's all part of G Suite. And I thought that was brilliant because all of our processes and documents and everything are already in Google Docs. Our biggest problem is we've actually built a Google Sheet that is searchable and is hyperlinked to the actual process. So if you're looking for a canned response that's client facing and we've got keywords in it and everything that you can filter by, but it just makes perfect sense to have a Google site. So that might be a 2020 project to convert all that stuff into a, I don't think I can do it for 2019, but it might be a cool project for 2020. Any other suggestions as to how people are, you said, Matthew, that you're using Process Street.
Yeah, so I would love to see that Google site concept and kind of see how it can be morphed into something.
I'll let you know in 2020.
Yeah, in 2020. So with Process Street, we started using Process Street quite a few years ago. We don't actively use it internally, like having somebody go through and do the checklist. I'll say that right off the bat. What it's been great for was actually listing out and documenting the things we needed to do with it. Because I loved when you're creating it, you can shift and reorder things. So you can start to build out these guides in a sense. I also like it because you can use it you can basically ask questions through it. I've used Process Street a lot to kind of become like a survey previously, and we would zap information over into different applications. Now I use more like Cognito forms for that. But Process Street it was one of the first ones we found that really allowed you to embed. You can have a step, and in that step, you can put video into it. You can put words into it. So now you can really put the supporting information right into that task for people to figure out. We're now switching over, and it sounds like everybody, we're all switching. ClickUp is something that I will be completely honest. I was waiting for Seth David to finish building his out so I could just try to copy it. But apparently it's not that easy to copy it yet. So I'm having to build my own. Oh, well.
So Matthew, would you be using ClickUp to manage your projects or just for the process side internally?
Project. I was literally just talking with my business partner earlier today, and we've been, most of us will probably, if we're willing to admit it, this is something we work on for a very long time, before we ever actually finally get to an end result. The goal will be more of the task management that goes, it will be it's project-based task management. You'll have some sense of communication inside of that. But what I'm really hoping is that my ClickUp, I can embed my ClickUp into my team. Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, so you've named a whole bunch of apps there. Let's take a step back. Okay, so Process Street is not a task management program then. Because I'm not familiar with it at all, and I don't know.
No, it is made for process. It is for tracking processes. So it's a checklist based application, but you can really customize and curtail it. I would be happy to pull up something and show it, but it literally, you design out a repeatable task list. You can assign different tasks to people. You can even put stop gaps in place to where basically you have to get sign-offs. So as you start at the beginning, and if you're doing a month-end process, first you have to do all your you have to take all the transactions in. Then you have to do reconciliations. But now your boss has to approve it. Then it goes to the senior accountant, and they do the close. And for them to do the close, you get the gist, like all the way through it all. So that's a little bit different from that side.
So then why would you need ClickUp if Process Street does that?
Well, the real reason is for us, there's two partners, my business partner, Mike, and myself. Okay. And super fortunate. He's a great business partner. One of the hardest things when you've got a small firm is getting buy-in. We set up a lot of this process and we try to get all of it documented, but it honestly, it didn't stick. It wasn't engaged. So one of the biggest bits of advice I can give anybody is play with apps. That's fine. But before you do, check the inputs and the outputs. Don't waste your effort. If you're going to take the time to put something in to try it, make sure you can get that effort back out, i.e. into an Excel or whatever, so you could then take it to something else. So unfortunately, it didn't capture the hearts of everybody.
Okay. Okay, so that's an interesting point then. Obviously, you need buy-in from your team because you're building these tools and documenting these processes for them to use them. So it has to be easy for them to use, user-friendly. And as much as we hate to say it, team members come and go. So how do you build something? Because once you've invested some time and you're fairly far into it, it's not easy to switch. Like we're on Teamwork as our project management, have been on it since what, 2012, I'm going to say, Steve?
Yeah, it's been a while.
And Steve, when we started using it, there was nothing in our industry for any kind of task management, project management, nothing. And so we've spent a lot of time and energy getting everything into Teamwork the way that we want it. There are some great tools for our industry now, but the thought of moving makes me ill. Like literally, it makes me physically ill when Steve says, how invested are you in staying with Teamwork? We're invested. We're not changing. Yes, absolutely. You want to make sure that. I'm sorry.
You got to be careful when you make statements like that, and you say we're never changing. Never's a long time. Wasn't there a movie? Never say never.
Yeah, there was. We're not moving the foreseeable future, but so when you say, Matthew, that you didn't get buy-in from your team, and so you're moving to another product, where do you draw that line? Because like I said, your team members are going to come and go, and there's only so many times you can keep reinventing and building something. You need to actually move past the building stage to something else. So, and it's not a criticism. We've been there. We've done that as well.
Yeah.
It's a question for the audience even. Where do you draw that line that, hey, this is what we're using, guys?
So I love this question, and I'm actually excited to talk about it because the struggle is real. I think everybody always wants to put out there like they've got this best solution and everything else. You know what, guys? We struggle just as much as everybody else. We're trying to find the best possible answer for it. And Steve, I'd like to officially invite you to the Recovering Appaholics. We actually join, once in a while. And what we've done is instead of really bugging our partners with, can you check out this app? We bug each other instead. So we can save that time for this special occasion.
I need to be there too, because I spend so much time on apps. I would challenge you to list 10 that I haven't tried at least 8 of. I spend too much time on that.
Yeah. That's the crazy thing is it's because, so workflow design came out of applications, right? My favorite procrastination was going to product hunt and beta list. I didn't know it was going to become a profession to actually understand what apps can connect with what. But like the cobbler who has no shoes, if I'm using the analogy correctly, what that means is it's very difficult. Our inability to focus is the benefit of everybody else who needs us to find these things for them. So
that's what you're going to tell yourself, right? Somebody's benefiting from me having to research all these apps and
Wait a second. I think Matthew has a very valid point there.
thank you. Yeah, that's my story, and I'm telling that to my business partner. But
I think this could be a whole session just talking about apps frustration. I don't know, is that a term? But that's sometimes how I feel.
yeah, so how do we figure out what's the next thing? You know, I touched base on this a little bit earlier, and it is so important. You need to always, when you're trying something out, you need to be asking, how can I get my data in?
Yeah.
And how can I get it out? Because if I've got all my stuff listed in Excel, I'm not going to retype that stuff. Let me import it. More importantly, how do I get it out? And not only just so you could reuse it, but for security of data as well.
No, absolutely.
We try really hard. We try really hard. If you think of like a workflow design or a process design as like a big onion, every time you have a circle and you try to bring it in and you squeeze it in a little bit closer and closer till you get to the center, those rings are different aspects. So you have to do a full loop of, okay, I'm going to take this process and I'm going to do this improvement, but I'm going to finish the circle. I have to finish the circle. Because if you don't, you end up with all these branches that go off to nowhere. And that's where you start to really lose it. So we really have been trying to do that. I'm happy to say Teams became something because it was the byproduct that we used. We kept looking for something else to use because Teams sucked, but now Teams has grown into something pretty amazing and it works great. But we keep finishing that little circle. And if we don't feel we can finish the circle, I don't inject my partners into it anymore until I feel I've finished a circle.
Okay. So I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but you didn't actually answer my question.
No, it was a squirrel that grabbed me. Do you mind asking the question again?
The question was, at what point, and it's not just at, the question isn't just for Matthew. Michelle, if you have an answer, Steve, Jacqueline, Tatiana, if any of you have a response, at what point do you say to your team, okay, this is the tool that we're working for. We're not switching. We've built this out and it's mandatory that you guys use it.
Well, in our firm, we're very tech enabled, so we would probably never say this is the tool you're going to use forever. One of the things we do tell our staff is the kind of the industry that we're in, you have to be prepared for change.
Yeah.
So it's usually myself or my partner that we find that there's too much manual processes in using a piece of software that we don't like. So it's all about making it efficient. So if our software, if we start having to do some different things, or the software isn't working the way it's supposed to anymore, or we just discover new ways of doing things that the software doesn't support, then we'll move to something else. Okay. And we're always discovering new ways and new ideas of how to change things and make things more efficient. But that's what it is for us. And so far, the staff has been awesome because they join us because they know it's an environment of continuous learning and they love that. If they didn't love it, they would probably not even want to come on board, to be honest.
Okay. So that's perfect. Making sure you have the team that either embraces change the way that you do or doesn't embrace change the way that you don't. So being in line with how you
Exactly.
like to change things. Perfect. Can anyone hear my dog snoring
No.
in the background? No? Okay, good.
Don't blame it on the dog.
He's really loud and I'm thinking, okay, well, can everyone hear him snoring on the video? Okay. So one of the other comments, and I thought it was interesting in this thread, was someone said that, you have to document your processes for your team. That it was mandatory that you document your process for the team. So set aside a weekend and do them all. So I'd like to know from anyone in the group or in the audience, who can document all of their processes in a weekend? Because I want to hire you if you can.
Me too.
What are you paying? How much are you paying?
That would be worth so much. If you would document them all in a weekend for me, that would be huge.
I can have them done before tomorrow.
Okay, then you probably wouldn't do a very good job if you haven't done before tomorrow. But what kind of timeline do people look at? Or what is the?
Well, there's the problem that I have. We start documenting our processes and we get to a certain point and then they've changed.
Yeah.
Because exactly. So we're always adapting. So that's why when I look at how do people do it, I need something that's flexible so that if we've changed something, we can just change the part of that processes, because it's not always the whole thing. It's just pieces, right?
Yeah.
And you need to keep the past too, though, because you know what? Having the previous iterations easily available are important. So if you made a mistake, or more importantly, if another piece of technology changes that would have complemented another previous version of something else, you don't have to rethink it.
So how do you keep track of your versions?
I will give, so this is a pain point somewhat for us, but I'm going to give my business partner the credit where credit is due on this. Mike is very, very much an accountant who loves Excel. And he has built out some phenomenal tracking lists, everything inside of Excel, which they work, and the team, our supporting team, it works great for them. It drives me insane because I can never understand where things are supposed to go with it. That's where Process Street came to me. I feel that if you're really trying to document these things out, it's supposed to be a manual. So if you look at when I'm writing up like some of the articles I've written and I'm diving in on how to do this or that with custom fields or projects, that's my idea of a tutorial or instruction where it's like you're explaining the different buttons, what they can do, how you would use it. I like video is my biggest thing. We do a lot with Loom, and we've actually been looking at, what is the video within Teams? It's there's a video thing. I'll come and figure out what it is in a second. That's part of the whole Microsoft world that you can actually put little videos in on the different teams, so we can have the specific workflow steps uniquely on the team of that client. So did that answer? Did I scroll again? I scrolled again.
Yeah, I didn't get the part of how you manage the versions.
How do you manage your versions?
It's
important to keep past versions. How do you manage yours?
For me, it's a lot of old versions of documents itself. So
you rename it or give it a new number.
V3, V4, that type of stuff. Yes. Okay. But again, I have to give the credit to my business partner because he's the one for most of our clients. He's been documenting that. He's the primary point of it. He does it in Excel. So we actually have it. It becomes added additions. Let me pull one up. You guys keep talking. I'll pull one up and kind of show you what I'm talking about.
So we have two different kinds of documentation. We have documentation that's specific to a client, like this particular client likes to be communicated this way. So that's specific. That's actually in our project management software, tied to the client profile.
Yep.
Not really a CRM, but almost like that. And this would be something that would be separate that I'm thinking with the process. It's not specific to the client, but more specific to our firm. So to me, that's almost like two different problems that we're trying to solve.
And it absolutely is.
Okay.
It absolutely is. So in our firm, to track versions, so all of our processes are documented in Google Docs. And at the bottom, they're in the footer. Every document has a document number, which is what's referenced on our master table of contents. So it has a document number. It has a document date so that it says when it was updated, so that if someone is looking at the process and it's 2.5 years old, then think about whether or not it's all still relevant, because it just may mean that no one has updated it. It has the initials of the person who updated it last, and it has a version number. And in Google Docs, every time you update it, it actually keeps version history. So it's another tab in Google Docs where it's actually, I think it's the activity tab, and you can actually go and you can see previous versions if you want to, and you can restore them, or you can restore it as a new document. So it keeps all the versions as we change them as well.
So I think that's kind of an art, just even deciding what's a process, like what,
Yeah.
how granular do you get a process? Because when you talk about these documents and a process, and that's kind of, I mean, we're getting really picky here, but that's kind of the things that I struggle with. You know, what's a process? What's a sub process? How detailed do I go? You know, that's the sort of thing that, you know, they didn't teach us that in accounting school for sure.
Yeah. I'm happy to share my guideline as to where I started. So I started with, well, what did I find myself saying over and over and over and over again? I want to stop saying it. So write it down. And I love the idea of video. So we have built into a lot of our processes. And so we use Zoom videos and just record the Zoom and upload the video. And it's given though a process now, like a document number, it's given a version code. It has all the rest of that information, but if it's easier to explain it in a video, then we've got Zoom videos up there as well. But I started with, what am I saying over and over again? Or what are people struggling with over and over and over again? And start with those, start with the big ones.
That's fascinating. You sound so organized, like you've got a whole naming and numbering structure around it.
Well, maybe we should burst that bubble a little bit.
It sounds awesome.
Well, and it is as organized as that, but that then brings us to a whole other question. How do you encourage your team to actually look for the process rather than coming to you asking you, how do you do this? When you've already invested the time and energy to create a process so they could go and find it themselves.
Well, for us, and I don't know what anybody else, because we're virtual, we're not always available. So if somebody has a problem, and you know, sometimes that's by design, we're not always available. So sometimes when you're not available, it's amazing what people can figure out on their own.
I've actually said that with my team because we have a live chat, a teamwork chat for all of our team. And you'll see someone post in the group chat, they'll ask a question and nobody will have time, nobody will see it, nobody will answer it. And then 15 minutes later, oh, no worries, I found the answer. I'm thinking all you have to do is just wait long enough and they'll all get answered.
I know I always joke with Juliette because one of my rules for email is that not every email needs to be answered. And it's amazing how many emails just solve themselves. That you don't answer it, you don't do anything with it, and nothing ever happens. That it just, the situation got resolved.
Yes, interesting.
Silence.
Silence. I don't agree with that. So I don't live by that. I can't do that. But Steve.
Yeah, I think I can't do that either.
It must be an accountant mindset.
Okay. So talking about processes then, so who creates them? Is it you as the business owner? You as the firm owner? Is it your team that creates them? Who is it that spends the time to create? Because it's not, we've determined that it's not doable in a weekend and that Matthew, it's not doable for you by tomorrow morning. So who's going to?
Matthew said he could do it in a weekend.
Matthew
I said I could do it before tomorrow. And there's
tomorrow.
actually, because tomorrow never comes. So I'm telling the truth.
Okay, you didn't say that. You didn't say that. You just said you'd have it for tomorrow.
Details.
Okay. So we've determined it can't be done in 3 days. So how and who does it? Do you have your team do it?
Well,
Oh,
I
wouldn't that be
try.
nice?
I try to get the team involved. So I try to do like a sort of a template what we do, like essentially what the general steps are, and then I told them, you work with this customer, so you have something that only you know what is specific to this customer. Can you just put that in over here? You know how often their HST filing is, and this little things. which would probably take them maybe half an hour just to do it.
Yeah.
And nobody did that. We're still, I kind of still reminding them about that. Like, how about this going? And no, that's not going anywhere. So I think I have to build up on my whatever template basis and just kind of expand it to get all the specifics. But they kind of I don't know, they were listening to Steve. They just said, yeah, we'll just kind of keep
It'll resolve
quiet and do
itself.
nothing. Tatiana's gonna do it all.
Okay. Anyone else have any commentary?
I would love
I'm
it if the
just,
staff
I'm
would
just
do it.
solo. I'm just
Oh.
solo, but I start off with a checklist, and when I get a new client, I fill out, expand to it, and then I have it in case A, I get someone, or B, something happens to me, that somebody knows what the heck's going on for that
Yeah.
person, right? Don't
Yeah.
want to leave them hanging.
Absolutely. Michelle, you were going to say something?
Oh, no, I was just commenting, it would be just nice if the staff would do it.
Yeah.
That was just- But like Tatiana said, that's, you ask them and it's nobody wants to document.
Yeah.
Nobody.
And that was a struggle for us as well. And I think, I mean, it's still a struggle, that you're going to find that there are people that enjoy doing it, and they will do it, and they will document everything. And then you will have people who don't like to do it and will never do it. Doesn't matter how many times you ask them. And understanding which of your team members will do it and which ones won't, you can then either yourself or one of these team members who does like to actually do it, sit down with one of the other team members. And as the team member is doing the work, they're sitting next to them on a laptop and filling in the processes.
This conversation is, I mean, strikes very close to home. It has been one of the areas that has been one, for me, it's been kind of challenging and somewhat frustrating. I'm literally going through Teams right now, trying to click on where I knew the template's supposed to be, and it's been moved. And I have no idea where it's at right now to be able to show it. No clue, which means the process was changed for the clients I'm looking at, and I have no clue where that new change is at. So it just shows that it takes a lot of time and energy for a team to always stay succinct on where things are at, especially as your client list grows.
Absolutely.
Well,
and it takes
isn't
time
that-
for the team to stay in sync as well.
Isn't that what the government is regularly trying to train us to do? To stay in sync of what all the changes that they're doing?
Are you in Canada or US?
I'm Canadian.
Okay.
I don't think it matters.
Yeah, I don't think
That's
so
true.
either.
Yeah. I think what has consistently happened, at least for us, and it's not necessarily wrong. It's just, I mean, there's so many different perspectives or different ways to get to an end result. So like I said, my business partner, he loves Excel. I have 15 different Excel sheets in front of me that are all different meetings from notes that are beautifully organized, but I have no idea what they're for, but it works for him. I'm going to give an analogy of, we all have these different online meeting platforms, Zoom, GoToMeeting, Uber Conference, everything else. What really makes the best process is if we could somehow find a way to have a central hub, like a grand central station that allows our team members to deviate and do what they want the way they need to, so long as it goes back and reports into a structure that we all can have as the core structure. So if anybody finds a holy grail, let me know.
That's brilliant. Can you please build that by tomorrow?
I can.
will buy it.
Before tomorrow, I can do it.
Yeah.
But I kind of
But
feel like
tomorrow
we're
never
going full
comes.
circle, because I think this was my original question in the thread, is the
Yeah.
process to document all this stuff. So it's like it's a problem that we can't solve.
Well, it is
Not right now.
And I think that also the challenge with processes and the documentation, with a client task list, it remains pretty constant. And, if you add grow your scope of services or shrink it, it's fairly easy to maintain. But the processes, as Michelle said, the industry is changing so much. So the way that you do things changes so much that your internal processes, they have to evolve. If they're not, your business is going to suffer in the long term. And so being able to document it easily, completely, it's always going to be something that's moving. And I think it's an unrealistic expectation. Hey, my entire business is documented and I'm done. It's never going to happen.
Well, and I think that's why there are VAs that is all they do, is document processes for companies. Because it's a challenge for, I mean, it's not just our industry, any industry. I mean, think about lawyers, and documenting their processes and what they have to do, and engineers. And so there are VAs that is all they do.
I think we just proved the point of why it's important to choose a niche.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
No, absolutely. And I see sometimes, in some of the conversations on the Facebook groups, that people support 6 different kinds of payroll. And we talked about this, 6 different payroll providers. And my head would explode because we have 2 in our office. 90% of our clients use 1. And the number of processes that we have around this one payroll provider, I can't imagine having to duplicate that 6 times, because this one payroll provider rolls out new changes all the time that we have to update. What if all 6 are doing it? And that's just one app. What about, the accounts payable and the invoices and, QBO and Xero and Sage and Wave? Honestly, you could never document it at all. So yes, the narrower your focus, the better you can document and get consistent results.
We forgot to mention the most important variable out of all of this.
What's that?
The client making changes on their own.
I'm sure they do.
Absolutely.
Oh, you mean to how they're running their business or
yeah.
services that they want? Or could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, do we have another 2 hours? But yes, the fast version of it, super poignant example, payroll. A client of ours for quite some time, is she manages to watch this one. I'm talking about you, she who shall not be named. We had a difficulty dealing with employment retirement contributions, and basically that we would have to send the check out for that person. Simple little thing. So because of that one little thing, she decided to change payroll providers. Now, in the process of doing that, she forgot about workers' compensation. She forgot to make sure the only thing that got handled was the payment to the retirement company. That was it. They actually missed one of the employees. They missed a paycheck. They missed so many different things, all the integrations for the time tracking and how that gets pulled in. And now we literally have this other payroll provider that's pulling a journal entry in instead of direct information. And it's like, you just set yourself back so far by doing this one little thing instead of just being willing to cut a check yourself once a month or whatever it is for that company. So those kind of changes happen, and it causes you to change your workflow.
But did they not discuss with you first what would be the benefits or what would be the cons and pros of changing the payroll provider?
Great question. Traditionally, yes. Yeah. Love this person. They've been a friend for a very long time. Afterwards, I'm like, what did you do? Why did you do that? I think she literally got sold, I think is why. Normally, yes, but this was one time, no. So I thought it was a great example to use because yeah.
Absolutely. We're being reactive as opposed to proactive.
Tonight's discussion reminds me of a great quote by Peter Drucker, who I'm sure you've heard of. And it was something, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's something like, there is nothing as useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all.
Right.
I often tell people sometimes my desire to help is not helpful at all. Please, if you find that to be true, let me know and save us both time.
Absolutely.
No, that's great. Okay, we have a couple minutes left. So we've determined that 3 days is not enough, right, to do a process. We've talked about there being different ones between internal processes and then client-related task lists. Has anyone done, and I don't remember who it was that I was talking to at one of the conferences, and it just sounded like utopia for me. We're not there yet, but basically they have a task list for a client. And if the task list is, so let's take an account payable example, push receipts across from Receipt Bank. So that's your task on your task list for your client. And then for the bookkeepers who have been doing it for a while, they know how to do that and they check off when they're done. But for those of them that don't know how to do it, they actually embed all the steps of how to do that in Receipt Bank as a resource attached to the task. Anyone have that?
We have some of that actually.
Awesome.
We
You want to
have-
come and do mine?
No.
I'm just trying to get somebody to come and do mine.
What we're using a tool called WorkflowMax. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it.
I've heard of it. Okay.
It's actually a zero product, and I've tested like all of the other ones. And what I love about it is it does really good reoccurring jobs,
Yeah.
and it does let you set up those templates, which with a lot of detail. So you can have a task, assign it to different people in a project.
Yeah.
So let's say you have your junior person pulling this kind of information and your more senior person. So it lets you assign that, and then you can go deeper and actually have checklists. And within the checklist, you can embed hyperlinks. It's really not that sophisticated. I don't know if it can do video, but we're finding it very effective because it's something that's repeatable. Now that's internal processes and tasks. So that, to me, that's a fairly easy problem to solve because it's just, a fixed list. It's not personalities, which is the people process is personalities, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So in your WorkflowMax, so we've got, because what we had started doing was, okay, push bills across from Receipt Bank as the task. And then we had listed how to do the steps in the actual task. And the people that had been there for a while on my team said it's just too much. There's too much for us to look at. So we want to be able to reference it we want the new people to be able to reference it if they don't know how to do it, but we don't want to look at it if we don't need it, but we need the two of them tied together. And so we've got it where there's a hyperlink to a video, but it's messy because, but this one person, I don't remember what tool they were using. It was pretty awesome. Sorry, that was my computer ringing. So no one else has that?
Well,
So-
I think we tested out Arrow. Arrow has a lot of that kind of process stuff
Yes,
embedded
maybe
in
it was Arrow. It might have been Laura Redmond that I was talking
Yeah.
to.
Yep.
It probably
Yeah,
was.
that's what I thought about. I thought it was Ira.
Oh, maybe it was. Okay. I'll have to reach out to Laura again. Maybe she'll come and do mine.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think
Probably not. Okay. All right. So great discussion. We've got like a minute left. Anything else that anyone wants to throw into the mix before we sign off for another week?
I want to say thank you for inviting me today. I had a blast. It was really great to talk
Excellent.
to all of you guys.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming out. Michelle and Tatiana, you're both here for the first time. Thank you very much for
Well,
joining.
I'm not really for the first time, but I've been missing that all the time. And now today, I finally decided to put it in my calendar so that it opens. It
Excellent.
opens up the reminder. And I'm like, yes, because all the other weeks, I go on Facebook on Thursday. I'm like, oh, this is Thursday already. I missed Wednesday.
I'm glad you were able to join us online.
Yes.
So thank you, everyone. And as well, Jacqueline and Matthew, and Steve, of course, our regulars. What are you
Have a
drinking,
great
Matthew?
week.
That's my tea.
Okay.
Simply-
Grapefruit.
Okay, grapefruit. Okay. Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Have a fabulous
Have a
week.
great week.